I'm not ready yet. Biggles. I'm an RPG veteran. I really enjoy pushing hard endgame content. And in Season 1 of Diablo, I rolled a sorcerer, mainly because I like playing underdog classes, and, everybody's aware of the nerfs that sorcerers had. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to see what they're like. And I kind of anticipated Blizzard are going to buff them at some point. After the community outcry, Blizzard wants some goodwill, they're going to buff them. Which today they did. They announced. And so, yeah, I started looking at sorcerer builds. I always like making my own build. I'll look at other builds for inspiration. I think that's great. I recommend everybody does that. You don't have to copy a build, but go and look at, Max Roll, other good players on Twitch, and just look at what they're doing. Everybody has good ideas and good input. No single person is the best at any game. And, collaboratively, you're going to come up with a better build. I mean, I'm always speaking to other theory crafters in Discords. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Oh, have you tried this interaction? Do you know how this mechanic works? And regarding this build, I came up with it. I started leveling as Firewall, and I started looking at some of the sorcerer passives. And I was like, actually, especially early game, they've got a lot of DR on the skill tree. And I know that armor is king, I won't deny that. I came from a rogue, and rogues just have that, unconditional damage reduction from armor. But, that only materializes late game. I think early game, sorcerers actually have more defensives than rogues. Rogues can get Dark Shroud, but early game you don't have the dodge to sustain that Dark Shroud, and it just gets eaten through all 5 charges really quickly. Whereas sorcerers, you can get a lot of DR on a sorcerer early game, and the armor delta that rogues have, it only really materializes late into the Paragon, where they're activating those glyphs, they're unlocking those armor nodes, they're using the glyphs that boost rare nodes, and they've upgraded them. But yeah, so I found sorcerer quite interesting. And this season especially, you can build full tank and do damage just due to the Barber. I won't deny that. A lot of this build is carried by Barber, so I'm not claiming Sorcs are fine. I mean, they're fine this season, don't get me wrong. I think you can face tank all content now as a sorcerer. 1, because of the nerfs, and 2, because of the Barber gem. You can build full tank and still do insane damage. Whether that'll get nerfed, I'm not sure. I mean, it's not that broken single target. It's a significant boost, but it's not, egregiously broken. But, against packs, it's just ridiculous. But anyway, I've done all content with this build. I've done a tier 100. I haven't done Uber Lilith yet. I might have to change things up for her, but this is very similar to North War's Blizzard build that I know can do Uber Lilith even post nerf quite comfortably. So wouldn't be difficult to change over. But this is the setup that I use for the tier 100 and the tier 98, which I'll put in this video as well. I'm using Arc Clash as the basic. I think that's a great skill, and I'll go into why I'm using this in more detail, but Arc Clash and then Enhanced Arc Clash. Firebolt, like a lot of sorcerers, purely to get access to that enchantment. Ice Shards, that's just because of the interaction with the enchantment against frozen targets, works really well with Blizzard. Like a lot of sorcerers, I kind of agree, there is too much reliance on these defensives. They're just so strong. What else would I put here? I could put another damaging ability, but these are just so good. Flame Shield heals me, Teleport gives me about 30% DR, which is a lot of DR, just 30% flat. It's a lot for those 3 seconds. Ice Armor, just barrier, it's great. And then Frost Nova with the extra points in it, just so we can activate it more because it triggers vulnerable. Again, talking of design decisions, I don't know how Blizzard doesn't anticipate how strong vulnerable was going to be, but yeah, like a lot of builds, we're taking that. Align the elements. I think this is really, really strong. Basically, after 3 seconds of not taking damage, and to my knowledge, barriers will if something hits your barrier, you're not taking damage, and it's only from elite. So if little things are hitting you, it's got to be the elites that damage you. So that's a lot of DR, 40%. And bosses are considered elites, as are players if you're into PvP. Mana Shield, 100 mana, 21% flat DR. Again, already we're looking at 40% DR from elites, 21%, 30% if we use Teleport. That's a lot of DR that's adding up here. Coming into here, we have the increased barrier duration to unlock Cold Front. With the 4 defensive talents, and with the protection talent, it means we have barriers up all the time as a sorcerer. Like most sorcerer builds, you're constantly reapplying barriers. Blizzard, we only need 1 point here because, like North War's Blizzard guide, which I'll link, because a lot of my build is just, it's basically a variant of his that's more tanky, because I can use Barber to offset the DPS loss in Season 1. So yeah, 1 point in Blizzard, because the damage doesn't come from Blizzard, it comes from the Glacial Spike aspect. We just need the point in there to basically unlock the skill. Enhanced Blizzard deals more damage to frozen enemies. That's one is a really good secondary, we don't have a choice there, but it's just really good. And then Mage's Blizzard just lasts longer if we cast it above 50 mana. Coming here, Inner Flames, again, that's just a filler point to give access to Devouring Blaze, which was nerfed. I mean, it's even super strong there. Look at that, 21% critical strike, multiplicative damage against burning enemies. It's just really strong. And again, that ties into why we're using Firebolt to unlock the burning damage. Coming over here, we've got Permafrost. Again, that's mainly to unlock Hoarfrost here. Really, really good. Multiplicative damage against both Chilled, and then 36% multiplicative against Frozen. And then we've got Icy Touch. We deal more multiplicative, more cold damage to vulnerable enemies. Here, I'm not sure how good this is. I mean, some people probably don't like it, but I really rate this. I said I'm not sure how good it is. I think it's actually really good. 0.9% of your maximum life each nearby burning enemy, and with Arc Clash, which is my direct damage spell, that cleaves in front of you. If I put 5 enemies, if I apply that to 5 enemies, that's 5% of my max life per second healing, or 1.8% against bosses, and that gets boosted by willpower, by increased healing. Have a look at my willpower now. What's that at? 55% more healing. So that 5% is more like 7.5%. So that's a lot of healing per second. That's 5 enemies. If I applied it to more, let's say 10 enemies were burning, we're looking at 10%, 15% HP per second. Coming over here, Coursing Currents. Whenever I hit an enemy with my shock skill, which is my basic, my Arc Lash, we get 1% crit. It's good. It's really strong early game. So when I was leveling, so I've got a video on my channel of the capstone, the World Tier 4 capstone to Elias at level 55. I mean, I entered the dungeon at 54, but I leveled up inside, and I face tanked that. I was playing Firewall at the time, but it was essentially the same build, but Firewall instead of Blizzard as my damage dealing sort of mechanism. But this, I had 3 points in at that time, because the less crit you have, the more valuable this is. Because I've got 50% base crit now, it's not worth me putting that extra 2 points there. This is purely to unlock this. Again, more DR. But leveling, that 3% crit, when you've only got 10% crit, it means you're probably critting every 4th attack. Which with 10% crit, normally that, at least every 4th attack is probably less. It really, really does have good returns. But once you got enough crit, the value of the extra points in there just diminishes. It's not worth it. Coming over here, we take Veer's Mastery. I think this is underrated. I know it's getting the Mage Lord aspect is coming out soon, which buffs it. But that's a flat 20% close DR, which is really, really strong. And then if you crit with a shock skill, it becomes 25% close DR. 25% flat close DR, really, really strong. That is how I'm getting so tanky. And not only that, by using a basic skill. So the basic skill triggers Electrocution, 15% DR. It helps boost Veer's Mastery. It applies burning because it's direct damage. As would Ice Shards, I believe, but it's more consistent with Arc Clash. But it also means on my helmet, I can use basic skills, grant 20% damage reduction, flat. Another source of damage reduction. And damage reduction is, the tooltip says it has diminishing returns. It doesn't ignore that. It actually has exponential returns. It actually, the more you get, the better it is in terms of increasing your EHP. Zario, who is a content creator, I'll try and find his video. I'll link it after this. He did a great video on this, and it will explain why it actually has diminishing returns with respect to EHP and the number of hits you're going to take before you die. Really, really good. So yeah, I by using a basic skill and a lightning basic skill, a shock basic skill, I've accessed all that DR, and I can also now use this aspect. On my chest, I'm running a defensive chest. I know a lot of sorcerers were running Raiment, which I think is a great unique and really interesting. But to me personally, you give up so much survivability for that unique. I mean, look at this. You give up 4 defensive aspects, and you give up the defensive 4 defensive affixes, sorry, and a defensive aspect. I did the math and with someone else in a theory crafting Discord, and I'm probably taking less than half the damage than if I was equipping equivalent eye level. So there wasn't no big armor delta between the 2 items, but an equivalent eye level raiment, I'd be taking twice the damage. And this, I think, is actually not sort of specific to raiment. Other unique suffer this same issue. I think this is a wider design issue. Look at temerity. A lot of people say it's not worth it because yes, it gives you a barrier, but you lose 4 defensive affixes and you lose a defensive aspect. And so yeah, you get the barrier, but you're taking twice as much damage. Is that trade-off worth it? For me, with raiment, I don't think it is. I'd rather stay alive. I like playing tanky characters. Most of my other gear, it's similar to what North War uses on his max roll guide. I think North War's probably the best sorcerer or one of the best sorcerer theory crafters. I'll link his guide. It's really good. Have a look at it. I'm using his Paragon. When I looked at it, I thought this is great. I'm already tanky enough. I'm going to use his Paragon to extract the most damage I can from the Paragon. But yeah, the main changes are I'm using very DR focused chest. I'm using the DR aspects. On my gloves, crit chance, because I think crit's great and it synergizes well with, one with the barber, it synergizes well with all the lightning key passives like Veer's Mastery, and it just, it's more damage, it activates that critical damage bucket, it's just a really good stat. And the reason... So I'm segueing a bit here from the build, but something you should be aware of. On gloves, critical strike is what's known as a priority affix. So if you go for the D4 Craft website, it'll tell you what are the priority affixes. So when you go to re-roll items, gloves, the critical strike chance is more heavily weighted. So when I'm looking, if I want to trade gear on the official Diablo Discord, when I'm looking at items I want, I know the stats I want. I'm like, ideally it will have an open stat where I can roll the priority affix. So on gloves, I want critical. I don't want it to have critical strike because I know I can roll that quite easily, quite cheaply, and attack speed. I believe it's attack speed is the main one on gloves, and then critical strike is just below or is another priority affix. On rings, I know critical strike is the priority affix, but yeah, you want to look at what are the priority affixes, and you want to look at for gear where it's got 3 out of 4. And the one that you're going to re-roll isn't that priority affix because you're going to get it really, really easily. This aspect, I want a 25% one, but just a standard damaging aspect here. My pants, these are really good. I don't like the implicit. I'd rather the. I think the best implicit is the barrier when you're low life. But the stats on these are basically perfect. Unfortunately, I don't have a perfect disobedience, but I don't think you can go wrong with these, and it's high IP. I was really happy with these boots. I don't like the strength, but every other thing there is really good for me. And the DR while injured, I really like because I'm tanky enough that I'm probably not going to get one shot from 40% or 50% health. I'll probably end up at, let's say, 20%. It's unlikely that I'm going to leapfrog. What I mean by that is DR while injured's great, but if you take a huge hit at 36% health, you go under that injured, and then you're at 2% health. It doesn't matter how much DR you're going to get. The next hit's probably going to kill you. But I think overall, if I enter that injured state, I've got a nice buffer now, and that's 43% flat DR. It's absolutely huge. I really rate that. It's a max roll, so I kept it. The affix, the aspect I've got here, it's just, it's a really useful one for the Blizzard build because you're applying so much chill and CC. Enemies often go unstoppable, and it's just a multi against that. These gloves, this dagger gloves, what am I talking about? These I think is really good. Again, I'm a big fan of all stat, crit, vulnerable. Because I play melee, I think the dagger is the best one-hand implicit for me. I'm not reliant on lucky hit, so I'd prefer the dagger implicit, the damage to close over the wand. And then I use aspect of control. For clearing, I think crit strike damage to crowd control enemies is better than crit damage to Vul. I mean, it's neither here nor there really. I think Vul I should probably switch to at some point. But I think when I put these in, I was just like, what? They're pretty much always crowd controlled. You could put an emerald in there. I think a lot of guides do say to put an emerald, but I think when I got this quite early on, so you know I just kept the crit damage crowd controlled enemies there. I will swap it at some point to an emerald though. My neck, I got really lucky with this. I had 2 of these drop actually, and they've funded. One of them funded a lot of gear. And I've actually had 3 of these. I don't know how I've got so lucky with the. So I had the cooldown reduction, Mana Cost, and Hoarfrost ranks amulets drop 3 times. One I gave to a friend, really cheap. One I sold, made a lot of money, and then this one. And yeah, I'd like a 7.2% armor, but I think I'm about 15 million per reroll now, and you know I've only got 8 million gold. So I had to just leave it there at 5.7. Rings, again, what I was saying, I left the priority affix on rings is crit, so I wanted life, vuln, crit damage, and I left the crit chance free. I think one of these dropped for me, and the other one I bought. I think it was this one I bought. Again, really good, high eye level, so you're getting the most out of that max life. And again, yeah, it's the crit strike chance is the free affix, so I knew I could roll that. And in terms of Malignant Hearts, I haven't gone there. This is, you know, the build enabling Malignant Heart. It just gives so much damage. It's, you know, I think pretty much every build is better with this heart. It's so good. Against packs, it has exponential damage scaling. So, you know, the first enemy explodes. You know, your Blizzard crits a big group of enemies. The first one explodes. The other enemies then absorb that explosion. It gets added to their sort of damage tally. They explode, and it just becomes a chain reaction against packs. Against bosses, I'm not sure what the math is, but yeah, it seems fairly significant against bosses as well. I believe someone said it was double dipping. That is, you know, the damage you apply, let's say you do 100 damage in that 2.5 second window, when that explodes, that then gets multiplied if the enemy's vulnerable and by your crit damage, so it almost double dips. So yeah, really, really strong. Focus, this is pretty much the same as the stat priority that North War gives. Resource gen, cooldown reduction. I went for crit chance, but I went for all stats. Again, I'm a big fan of all stats. They unlock a lot of Paragon nodes. You know, that's 27 armor as well. More because you have percent armor on affixes. There's crit chance. I mean, my dexterity, how much crit is that giving? You know, 11.3% crit chance just from dex. That's, you know, it's significant. It's 25% of my crit chance just coming from dex. I'm getting armor, I'm getting resource generation, I'm getting healing, I'm getting intelligence, which is flat damage, and resists. I know resists are in a terrible spot at the moment, but not that terrible. And you know, also it's unlocking Paragon rare glyph bonuses. So yeah, that's pretty much the gear and the aspects and sort of the overview of how the builds work and how it synergizes. You know, I don't think there's much to it. It's basically the Blizzard build with Arc Clash instead of Deep Freeze, so we can, you know, get all those nice basic stats. Oh, I just realised I did that tier 98 dungeon without a gem in my helmet. Wow. But yeah, that's the build pretty much. I'll leave a max roll planner and in the guide. If you want to see the Paragon, as I said, I'm using North Wars. I'll link to that. He's got a really in-depth guide on the Blizzard build in general. And mine, as I said, is just a variant of that. I haven't really put, you know, as much effort as he has into it. You know, he was the real genius behind this. I was just like, oh, this gem does so much damage. I can sacrifice a lot of damage, get Arc Clash, and be pretty tanky, especially with things like these new hearts. You know, another 20% DR there, and the extra armor. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope this serves as a good resource for anybody wishing to try out this build. Thanks a lot, and see you guys soon.